How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, no, good. Nice having you.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad this worked out. You're in South Africa.
Yeah.
What time is it there?
It's now just after 9, 9:05.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So this is my show. It's sort of a new thing I'm doing, which is based on people's stories.
Okay.
And just reading your profile and stuff like that, I think you've got a very interesting story to tell. So I was really keen on just sharing something of your life and where you've come from to where you are now, with those people that are going to be watching the video. So let's just start from the beginning. Where did you get into music?
Well, I feel like music has just always been around me. I'm from a family that very much values the arts and literature and things like that. So I was brought up around, we had a piano in the living room and piano lessons when I was a little kid, but nothing that was forced on me. More things that my parents wanted to give me access to different art things. So it was just always around. And then I think, just sort of at the age that most people become obsessed with music, like adolescence, was when I slowed down enough to actually sit still and listen to things. I was a really active kid, I played soccer with the guys because the girls weren't aggressive enough. In elementary school, mind you, they became very badass later on. But it was, I guess around, adolescence that I became interested in music that was kind of current. My parents had everything from, classic rock stuff to classical music, Beethoven. My dad loves Bob Dylan. And it was just a lot of different music was always around. And I became interested, I think, in guitar specifically because that was a fundamental part of the music I was getting really into.
Yes.
And then it was when I saw Eric Johnson play that I thought, okay, I got to start playing guitar. And that was in high school.
And I mean, you've come far with your guitar. I mean, you and your husband, I'm watching some lessons that your husband does. Now, my mind was blown. I don't know. Your house has been so musical.
He's ridiculous. I knew who he was before we actually met in person. I think the guitar community, especially certain branches of it, are small enough that even if somebody's from Italy, which is where my husband's from, somebody posts something on the internet that makes enough guitar players go, what? And and so I knew who he was because of an arrangement he had done of the Simpsons theme that when somebody posted it on my Facebook wall, initially, my first impression of my husband was that he annoyed me.
Okay.
I was like, give me a break. He annoyed me because I was insecure. His playing makes most people insecure. But it was more like, is this what's expected of guitar players nowadays? And when I went and I just did a quick little search on who this dude was and how dare he play so well, I was actually relieved to find that he was a professional and well-respected guitar player in Italy and not just some random dude in his bedroom playing like that. Whatever, plenty of random dudes in their bedroom play really, really well. But it was nice to know that he was like a professional guitar player.
Yeah.
But he's on a different planet from from a lot of us.
How does it work with the two of you? Obviously you're both very musical. Do you guys ever give ideas to one another or?
All the time. Honestly, for a long time, I thought that it would be better for musicians not to date other musicians because I had a couple, kind of more casual boyfriends, and you realize that that people do music for so many different reasons. And the way you do music can be very different. So I might be a very kind of disciplined and organized musician, but I mean, there's a whole spectrum. There's people who pick up their guitar once a week and play for 12 hours, or there's people who noodle here and there, or there's people who are really disciplined and focused. And it's easy to go into a relationship with another musician with the expectation that somehow your creativity and your workflow is going to be even remotely the same.
Yeah.
And I would say that, interestingly enough, Danielle and I have a lot of overlap in our level of focus and discipline daily. I mean, we're both quite disciplined, and even though we might be on different sides, normally he's in Italy right now, but normally I give him the desk because he's currently working on an album that has like so many instruments, and so he kind of needs like the bigger computer, and then my workspace is usually over there, like on the coffee table. So we're like truly across the room from each other with headphones on, working on things. But there will be times. Last night, for instance, we FaceTime all the time. He was just waking up. I was just about to go to bed, but I wanted to show him this chord progression that I had come up with for a new thing I'm working on, and I was like, hey, let's get on FaceTime. I want to show you this new chord progression. And then other times he'll be like, hey, tell me what you think of this transition. So we bounce things off each other all the time, but in like a really nice way. It's awesome to live with your guitar hero.
It is just quite awesome to say.
I'm very lucky. I don't think very many people get to say that.
But you've played with some awesome people yourself. I mean, I just watched some of the things I saw there. I mean, I just was looking, your bassist on your one album is Stuart Ham. And I mean,
yeah.
And I mean,
yeah.
Gee.
Not a big name or anything, right? Oh my gosh. No. I'm still kind of incredulous that happened, but the way it came about is a really good friend of mine, Jude Gold. I don't know if you know him, but he's a great guitar player. He plays, well, with everybody, but right now he's playing with Jefferson Starship, but he's also a music journalist. He does the No Guitar Is Safe podcast, and so he's a great writer, a great guitar player, and a good friend of mine. And when I was trying to get my album together and realizing that I needed to get some musicians, my biggest concern, because this was all original material, I didn't have a band put together, and I had said, what should I do? And he kept saying, this drummer John Mader has such a similar kind of disciplined work ethic as you have. I think you guys would really do well together. And he had met John Mader because Jude Gold and John Mader were the resident guitar player and drummer for the B×3 tour. So that was like Stu Ham, Billy Sheehan, and Jeff Berlin. So like the B3 instead of the G3 tour, right? And so they played all night long with all three of those guys, right? And I was like, wow, I mean, that's amazing. That kind of versatility would be great to have. And the thing that you realize is the greatest musicians in the world, we all have to pay our rent. We all have to, get groceries. I say we. I don't include myself in that. I mean, like, they all have to. And then I thought, well, gosh, I really want the backbone of this album to be a bass player and drummer who can really lock in together and who enjoy playing together. And that's when I was like, do you think Stu Ham would do this? Because Stu can be so compositional in the way he plays as well. Like, I mean, really beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Almost like a classical style. I mean, I was watching his bass playing, and it's like,
yes,
it's very classical.
Yeah. And his knowledge runs deep, and his interest. He has a very deep interest in like classical and composed music. We got to, even though he played on my album, we actually got to play live together for the first time in Germany last year, and we played these songs that we had recorded together but not been in a room playing together. And boy, he was fun to chat with, because you spend a week with the other instructors and the students and everything, and his knowledge of classical music, or of all eras of music, was so deep, and he was so much fun to geek out with and to learn from. And so I got to have John Mader and Stu Ham on my first record. I knew if they did, if they were there, all I would have to do is not mess it up on my end.
But now, going to that first album that you did, Hail Souls, I mean, that's an awesome album. I mean, you got quite an eclectic sort of flavor to your musical style.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the kind words. I think I have eclectic taste, and so I think that's reflected in how I play. I didn't set out to be eclectic. It's just I think you exhale a version of what you inhale.
Yeah, and it's the same with Zepparella. I mean, because I actually came across you guys by accident. Like roaming around on YouTube trying to find new interesting guitarists to get. Because when I try and write a song myself, I like to go and look at sitting guitarists and see what they do, and try and learn from them. So and I came across your guitar playing, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then when I sat down and really listened to Zepparella, what I like about the band is that though there is some originality of your own style in the songs from all of you guys, it's still true to the roots of Led Zeppelin.
Oh, that's a huge compliment, and that's what we strive to do. Because there's so many different ways you can approach someone else's music. Yes. And it's interesting that in other genres, there isn't the same snobbery. In a rare instance, the rock players are the biggest snobs, which is no classical player ever looks down on another classical player. Exactly. It's like, oh, you're playing Bach? Gosh, that isn't an original. Or jazz players, there's standards that are part of the repertoire. Rock players are a little precious about their ideas. And to me, it's like, obviously, as somebody who the vast majority of my time is spent writing original music, I think having come from my first real training on guitar was classical, I just don't see there being a conflict. Great music is great music.
I agree with you,
great music is something that helps me become a more versatile player. Yes. We learn our first language imitatively from our parents. Why, music is a language. Yes. Why not learn from your heroes? Yeah. If you get to do paid education, why not do it? But with a band like Led Zeppelin, because they never played a song the same way twice, ever. I mean, live Led Zeppelin doesn't sound like the albums at all. Mm-hmm. Nobody took more liberties with Jimmy Page than Jimmy Page, so I've got a lot of leeway.
Yeah, but you don't fall out of the scope of that either, though.
Yeah, no, and fortunately, because of him, I have a lot of room to move around and still be even in a narrower band than he would do himself. Yeah. And so I try to approach it as a fan first. I was listening to Led Zeppelin before I was playing guitar. Yeah. That was part of what got me interested in guitar. And I feel like that having, loved live stuff, I'm very attached to the studio albums. I try to approach it that if I hear it and I like it and I'm attached to it, I play it. So if there's a solo, I learn that solo and I learn it just as close to as much as my ears allow. Sometimes I'll think something's exactly like this, and then a year later I'll hear it again and with different headphones, and I'll be like, oh, maybe this was actually here. So we're always growing as musicians, but I always say, it's weird to say I do it note for note because, well, I think I do, but maybe next year I'll tell you that I discovered one note that I now think is different.
I think you mentioned. I think you mentioned something important now about. I see you as a very great composer, not just a guitarist, and it's very easy, I think, for some people to think, well, now I'm so good, I don't need to learn anymore. And then you just said the important thing, you're always learning. And I think that's a very important, humble sort of thing to take when you get to, sorry to say this, to the level you guys are at. I think that's awesome. Very kind of you.
First of all, thank you. I think I consider myself a student first, and sometimes I forget that sometimes it's easy to take for granted what you already know. At least if you're in the mindset of a student, you're always looking to understand better what you don't know or what you can't do. So I appreciate that. And honestly, I don't know how any guitar player can develop an attitude. I mean, anybody, even Daniele, my husband, who is on such an insanely high level, I will tell you, and he wouldn't be mad at this, there are things he doesn't do. Like, he doesn't play classical guitar. You know, no matter how good somebody is, no matter how virtuosic, no matter how, like, mind-blowing they are, there is something that somebody else does better, unquestionably. And so as long as you're not living under a rock and just telling yourself how awesome you are all the time, I don't see how any guitar player could have a soul and head. It seems impossible. It's like, as soon as you think you're good, you know, you go on YouTube and you find some 7-year-old who's better than you are.
That's exactly the thing. I mean, I've got a 12-year-old kid who plays in an orchestra, and you know, so our house is full of music day in and day out, from the piano to the guitars to the drum kit and all of that.
Wonderful.
He's very much involved, and I'm involved in all of that. But I look at him and he streets ahead of me already at 12, you know, and so I respect, you know, exactly that. So he keeps me very humble sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, what I often tell my, you know, students, or like if I do master classes, whatever, it's like, who you are becomes how you play, you know. And if you're a self-absorbed narcissist, you're gonna play like a self-absorbed narcissist. And even if it might be exciting or interesting for a couple songs, I don't think that really resonates with people. Most people don't want music to be a celebration of oneself. You know, they want it to be saying something, to be communicating something, or to be somehow vulnerable or revealing of something. So whether, you know, so I think, at least for me, I can't speak for obviously anybody other than myself. To me, I don't find music that seems to come from a place of immense ego much more interesting than sometimes for a few minutes. There are some egos. There's some infamous egomaniacs who play guitar really well, and I might enjoy it for a few songs. But I don't find that that's what makes the lasting musical statements, or maybe even more gently said, it's not something I'm interested in becoming or expressing. So
and you can actually see it. You can actually see it when a guitarist plays. That kind of thing. Because I mean, that was one of the things why I enjoyed your guitar playing. You could see it's real and yet humble at the same time. There isn't this thing of like, listen, I'm now top tier. I played alongside Joe Satriani's bass player. You know, so it's really just cool to see that, and I appreciate, because I'm a music person, I collect music myself, and I enjoy playing a little bit of music. I don't consider myself an artist like you, but I can play music. But when I see people that are so humble about their talents or giftings of any sort, it really makes me like take notice of them.
Oh, and I just have to say, but you're an artist like you. Yes. And I think it's very easy for us to be comparing ourselves. I mean, I have to stop myself on a daily basis, because there's a fine line between being inspired and being kind of crushed by someone else. And I think that whether it's, you know, envy or somebody who's depressingly good, those are the same things that can be seen as very inspiring or very educational. And so I think the important thing to remember is that only you can write your music, right? Only I can write my music. Only Stu Ham can write his music. Only Mozart can write his music. It's not it doesn't matter. Trying to measure ourselves against anybody other than our own potential is it's the wrong way to look at things, even though it's so tempting to do it. And I say this to myself first, but more as a way of encouraging you. You never know who you might affect positively through your music. And whether that's your 12-year-old or whether it's somebody who hears your music on the other side of the world and it connects with them in just the right way at just the right time, that it helps them, you just don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And also just seeing on your page, you're a cat fan. Sorry, we're going right.
Yes, I'm wearing my rescue mom shirt, in fact. Yes, and I've got my two babies right now. I don't know if you can see them. Let's see.
We see the one. Yes.
Over there, and then Ferdinand is snuggling up with the piano.
Ah, awesome. And you're obviously a book fan. I can see that in the back.
Oh yeah. Yes, I am. That was the biggest pain anytime I have to move is like, and yes, I do. Some people have asked me, they're like, do you actually read those? It's like, why would you have them if you're not, I mean, not reading all of them right now, but I do like to read a bit.
Yeah. I'm a second-hand book fan. So
me too.
So
yeah.
I enjoy going to buying second-hand books and records and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of that's part of my passion. So yeah.
Me too. In fact, it's the most dangerous type of store. I'm not a shopper at all. I lack whatever that gene is, you know. Like I hate shopping unless it's like in an old bookstore. There's something about old books that it's the most dangerous type of store for me to go into on tour, because I end up coming up with like all of these of course nothing's heavier and more of a burden to travel with.
I disappear in stores like that. I can go disappear for hours. So.
What kind of literature do you like, or what kind of books do you find?
I'm sort of eclectic, so a bit of everything. So if it's a good engineering book, I would like to read a good engineering book. I love biographies. I enjoy those, and then the odd. I even enjoy some of the kids' stories. For instance, there's Tintin and so I've got a huge Tintin collections.
Yeah.
The famous 5 collections. And stuff, and then I read those even to my wife and myself. We like to read it even to our children if we can. So
how cool!
So so things like that as well. So yeah, I'm very eclectic and obviously anything music related. So I've got books on the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and because I'm eclectic as well in terms of what I enjoy to listen to, I sort of what I play is sort of like punk rock, but what I listen to is very much like eclectic jazz, classical. I enjoy all sorts of, especially good music. I have a great passion for good music. So you sit there and you just close your eyes and listen to the music, you know?
That's so cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I know so many people now where what they play isn't necessarily what they listen to. And that's something that I love about musicians in general, is I feel like that a lot of my friends who aren't musicians, they've kind of they tend to stick with what they kind of already listen to, right? And they don't necessarily seek out new things. They don't stretch their ears in the same way. Obviously there's lots of exceptions to that, but I feel like musicians, more than your average, non-musician person, tend to keep their ears more open for more of their lives, seeking out things that are maybe way outside their genre. Like if I think about, what I have thought in high school that I would be interested kind of in like weird microtonal stuff, I don't even know if I would have told you last year that I'd be interested in that. But I got to play on a piece by this amazing composer, Stephen Mackey. It's actually for a project that's coming out at the end of August called Another Night on Earth, and it's pairing up guitar players from all over the world in duets, like virtual duets. It's like guitar players who are also composers, and these virtual duets. And so this guy Stephen Mackey, he's like a professor at Princeton and an award-winning composer, and he's an electric guitar player who also writes for like orchestral pieces, and he wrote a duet for the two of us to play, and it's one of the coolest, weirdest, stretching my ears. Like I feel like I grew so much listening to and learning this, and music, being a musician, kind of makes you always challenge yourself, challenge your taste, challenge your hearing, and ultimately you grow and are enriched because of it. So it's so cool that we get to do that, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
I did a project a while back, well, just one song. I say it's a project, but it was just one song with a rap artist who came to me and said, you know, do you want to do some guitar for a rap song I'm doing? And I was like, I'm not a hip hop artist. I'm gonna do this, you know. So the dynamic of the guitar had to change, and the sound of the guitar, everything had to be different to what I normally do stuff for. And it was, and yet it still came out quite nice, but it was a stretch for me. And you have this doubt in your head, you know, is it gonna really be any good? Because it's not something I'm used to. But it's nice to take on challenges that scare you sometimes, I think.
Yeah. And I'm somebody where, like, that has been, I like challenges, but I'm also, my disposition is one of being a little bit more cautious, and I've had to learn to just say yes to things, to freak out internally, to channel that freak out into immersing myself in the work, and ultimately what I've yet found is that if I say yes, if something isn't too insane, like I was asked one time to like try to learn the Bach chaconne overnight to perform somewhere, and I'm like, yeah, that's not that. There's zero possibility that's gonna happen. Like even the greatest classical guitar player isn't gonna learn a piece that long overnight. I don't think. If there's one out there, in my understanding, you take a while, but I'm by no means even a pro level classical guitar player, and that was not gonna happen. But in most cases, as long as something is kind of conceivably possible or right on the outskirts of that, if I really devote the time and the energy and the study to it, sometimes you can surprise yourself what you can do and how much you can learn. And sometimes having a project like that is a great way to make a lot of growth in a short period of time. There's nothing like the prospect of imminent humiliation to motivate practice.
Well, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I've come far, you know, like for myself, in terms from, I think it was 2011 when we first did an album together, and I had this producer guy work with us, and he helped hone my guitar sort of sound and ability, and it was so nice having the soundboard to work off, especially at the beginning of our career. And it was just so great to progress. And I mean, today we play in a band together now, and he's like my soundboard. He's like the guy, you know. And he would tell me, "Listen, dude, that sucks," or whatever, you know. And I can take it in love, you know.
Yeah.
So,
it's important to have that. It's great. I mean, it's it's one thing to have somebody who you trust and who you know has your back tell you that you need to work on something. It's harder when it's just, you know, a troll on YouTube being like, you shouldn't be allowed oxygen. I'm like, oh, sorry. Guess you didn't like that song. Move along.
So what guitars do you like using generally? What's your favorite guitar?
I wish that were an easier answer, but because I play different styles a little bit, I have to give you different categories. So my favorite solid body electric guitar has always been my Music Man Silhouettes. Silhouette Special.
That's the one you use constantly. I mean, that's all with Zepparella and stuff, right?
No, that's a Gibson Les Paul, which is absolutely what I have to use for Led Zeppelin, and those are amazing instruments too. It just so happens that my first guitar was a Music Man Silhouette, and I have a long and very positive relationship with the Ball family, so they always feel like home, and also some people love to switch up their guitars a lot and get inspiration from the different sounds, and I can see that. I mean, it also happens for me when I pick up a new guitar. Sometimes it inspires you to do something different or gives you just enough amount of discomfort or lack of familiarity that sometimes you can surprise yourself by, you know, the things that will come out. But honestly, my energy is more spent on studying different aspects than of changing guitars a lot. So 99.9% of the time, if I'm picking up a solid body electric guitar, it's going to be my Music Man Silhouette. Actually, this week I have, actually I'm not sure if I'm allowed to show it, but let's just say that I have a new Music Man cut list that I'm going to be doing a video for Music Man with in the next couple weeks. So that arrived yesterday, and it's been kind of fun to play around with it. Just great guitars. And then for acoustic, like steel string guitars, I have a Steven Strom Eros, which is an absolutely gorgeous. They're hand-built instruments. It's way more guitar than I am a steel string player. I don't deserve the guitar, but I'm very happy that I have it. And Steven is just an amazing person and an amazing, amazing luthier.
Okay.
They're higher-end guitars for sure, so they're not entry-level models. But you know, for anybody who's looking for a guitar that is a piece of art that will go on for generations to their kids and grandkids, it's one of those. And then for classical guitars, Kenny Hill. I actually am so I have a Kenny Hill classical that again is way more guitar than I am classical guitar player, and outside of my tax bracket. But basically, somebody who felt that I had done them a good turn beyond what I thought got it for me as a gift, and I love the instrument. And at one of my shows a couple years ago, I was then playing with Zepparella in Felton, which is over near Santa Cruz, so kind of south and near the beach from the San Francisco area. A guy showed up at the merch table, and we were talking, and he was cool, like super white hair, just really, you could tell he was like really passionate about music. And he said, you know what, he's like, do you play classical? Like, I think there was something in my hand position maybe. And I was like, oh yeah, I love classical. I wish I played it more. Like, that's how I started. I have an amazing instrument. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a builder from up here. Yeah. And then I was like, wait, what's your name? Because Felton's a very small town. And he said, Kenny Hill. And I practically tackled him. I'm like, oh my God, I have one of your guitars and I love it so much. And since then we've kind of become buddies. And he lent me, for this new album I'm working on, he lent me his one of his two personal guitars. So right now, it's not my guitar, but I'm really happy to have it. Right now I've got Kenny Hill's personal classical guitar. So those are my three favorite for each category.
And you say you're doing new material now.
Yes.
Let's go back to your last album, Abandon All Hope.
Okay.
I see you say it was quite an emotional, or according to the internet, you said it was quite an emotional album that.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it such an emotional sort of, if I may ask?
Yeah, of course. Well, when I was going into it, I wasn't aware of what a journey it would be. I knew it would be a big creative journey because even though I had become interested and I knew that whatever the next album I was going to do after Hail Souls, I wanted to blend sort of my love of literature with instrumental music, and I knew I wanted to do some sort of concept album. But it was Michael Melenda, who was at the time the editor of Guitar Player Magazine, and he hears a lot of instrumental guitar albums. He had heard something on Hail Souls, I think specifically the piece for solo violin, Walking Shadow, that he wanted to meet, and he's like, I have an idea for a collaboration. And he pretty much sat me down and said, I think you could write something more outside a traditional guitar album. I said, well, that's absolutely my plan. What do you have? And instead of doing what I was sure he was going to do, which is what everybody's always done, well, you should sing and you should play more popular music, you know. Instead, he slaps down a piece of paper that says, you know, basically, Michael Melenda pitched to Gretchen Menn, Dante's Inferno, a journey in 11 different musical moods. And I was like, okay, don't say anything else, I'm in, I'll do it. But I knew I was going to have to, even though I studied music in school and I, you know, done a little bit of composition and stuff. It's not like you take one class in composition and you're like, now I know it.
Yeah.
I knew that I had a lot to learn in order to be able to realize this album even close to the way that I wanted to do it. And the topic and the history of the epic poem demanded. So I really buried myself in deeper study of composition and orchestration, and I read the Inferno twice, and I listened to a bunch of college lectures on it, and really tried to, I read the footnotes that are this thick, probably absorbed like, this much of it, but still, really tried to know my subject matter. Around this time, basically, well, two big things happened, which is like the one big relationship I've had prior to Daniele, my husband, was ending, and that was unwinding at the same time, and that was very hard. And also my best friend, who was truly like a sister to me, was battling and ultimately lost the battle with leukemia. So I was going to the hospital almost daily anytime I wasn't on tour. So it was a very intense time. I didn't expect to go through my own version of hell during the album, and I don't mean to, it sounds lighter, when you say my own version of hell, but it was without a doubt the hardest time of my life. And in some cases, having that outlet of tapping into some of these things was actually really therapeutic for me with this album. I'm not somebody who's a dark person. Like, I'm really lucky with the brain chemistry my DNA gave me. Like, I'm good unless something really bad happens, and so the whole process of going through the album was, it also marked the darkest personal time and the biggest struggle in my life. So that's the story behind.
And you had your, I think it's on that album you had your sister at the last track. I'm trying to think now what the last track was called. Fading, I think I wrote down. Yeah.
Oh, that's on Hail Souls.
So, Hail Souls. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. My sister's on that, and so my sister was trained in opera, but she didn't go on to be a professional singer. She just has this voice of an angel, and actually that was kind of almost an afterthought. Is Fading was not initially, it didn't include a singer, but then when I was listening to like an early mix of it, sometimes your creative imagination gets going, and I kind of started hearing this vocal line, and then I recognized it as my sister's voice, what I was imagining. And so I asked her, like, would you be willing to do this? And she was like, sure. And she'd never been in a studio before. Like, she was so, she was like, she's a doctor. She's not, so she doesn't work in entertainment or anything like that. She doesn't perform. And so she came into the studio and she just slayed it. I think, professional musicians will come and they'll be like, it's okay if I kind of mess around for a little bit. Kirsten just came in and laid it down. It's gorgeous. And she's also on quite a few tracks of Abandon All Hope. You can hear her voice on Limbo. That was actually one where she was singing so beautifully that I ended up coming up with sort of the choir part of it in the studio. I had my staff paper and I'm like, actually, sing this. And then she would. I'm like, oh, wait, sing this. And she would. And so we created this choir of Kirsten's, like, right there. And then she's also on Mist towards the end, and Grace. And also she plays keyboards. She's she didn't play the piano parts. That was Salome Scheidegger, this wonderful Swiss piano player who played the classical piano parts. But all of like the organ sounds, that's my sister as well. She's an immensely skilled, like if I didn't love her so much, I'd have to hate her. She looks like Scarlett Johansson, but she's like a doctor, and then she plays like violin, viola, and piano and sings like that. But in the meantime, she's off saving lives. That's just what she does for fun. I'm like the total slacker.
Oh man. Yeah, but it's so nice talking to you. You know, it's not normally easy to try and get sometimes artists sometimes on, especially when you're starting something new, a new project. So I was really surprised when you actually said yes. So it's great to have you here.
Oh, you know, I love talking with people about music, and right now, with no shows happening, it means that my schedule is a little bit more able to accommodate stuff. I mean, I'm staying busy with videos, and actually I'm doing an online guitar camp with Jennifer Batten and Neely Brosh and Vicky Genfin. It just got announced, I think, today. And that's going to be happening August 7th through the 10th. So I got a lot of work to do to prepare for that. But it's an absolute delight, and I'm so flattered by, you know, your familiarity with my music and stuff. Not all. I've actually had a couple interviews that were like, so, where it's clear the person who's interviewing me has barely knows that I play guitar.
I mean, I'm following your career for a bit now, but yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it's nice to see, what I always say, it's nice to see composers and guitarists or any musician that puts their heart on the line. And like when you listen to, especially even like a band in Hope, that album there, I mean, you can see how you've literally poured your whole sleeve out on that album. You can see it's a very personal album.
It is a very personal album, and I have to thank Michael Molenda. There's I've decided, at least for myself, I feel like one of the greatest compliments that doesn't feel like a compliment at the time, but one of the greatest compliments somebody can give you is basically to say, I think you can do better. And that's essentially what Michael Molenda said. I mean, actually, he wasn't putting down Hail Souls at all, but he was saying, I think you can do something bigger. And when somebody has that kind of faith in you and suggests it, things that you might have been too insecure or whatever to even imagine you could do. Because honestly, I didn't even feel worthy of doing my first album, which was far less ambitious. No less. It's not sincere. I mean, I should say it's not insincere. The music is genuine. I mean, I still love playing Valentino's Victory Lap and Oleo Strut and scrap metal. You know, those are part of my.
Scrap metal's one of my favorites.
Is it? It's super fun to play. I mean, I love playing that stuff, and it works well live. But for somebody to say to you, you should imagine bigger things, is one of the deepest compliments if you really think about it. And I think it was his suggestion that I had not fully applied myself to developing a sound that he heard is already kind of there in its early stages. I don't know if I would have felt worthy to try to tackle something like that. It almost meant that somebody from the outside did. So I mean, I talked to Mike. Actually, I'm going to talk to him later today. We got a new thing cooking, but I still, yeah, I do. But I still thank him for being one of my greatest creative pushes. I mean, if it weren't for him, that album wouldn't have happened. I mean, his importance to that and to that era of my whole creative study and
it dropped for some reason, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
Let me just make you bigger on my screen. There we go. Yeah, so
anyway,
yes.
Yeah, I was just saying that Michael Molenda's importance in my creative growth would be really difficult to overstate.
Yes.
I mean, even if at the end of the day I still have to do the work, but the thing that ignites that desire to work is so important, and that was what he did for me with Abandon All Hope.
That's great. I mean, and it's just a wonderful album. You know, if I look back at Hail Soul, I get, you know, you see it as more of a rock progression, tinging on a bit of metal album. But when you come to Abandon All Hope, there's so much more in it. It's classical, it's compositional. You got to use the word compositional because it's actually composition, it's not just songs. And
right.
a lot more detail in it compared to your previous album. And I think that's what I enjoy about it. You know, listening to the little things in the songs and stuff that you guys have done. You know, it brings out the flavour of the songs. I really did enjoy it. You know, I really love it, and I think it's a great progression from the first one.
Well, thank you. That means so much to me. I mean, my hope is to continue to learn new things and to be able to do new things and to be able to come out with albums that are never just regurgitations of something I've done previously. Although I will say I had so much fun doing Abandon All Hope, despite the fact that fun maybe it's not what everybody would consider fun, because it was an absolutely enormous amount of work. But I'm a little masochistic, so it's fortunately Dante's got 2 more. The Divine Comedy only starts with Inferno, so I'm.
So we're going to see more from you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
my intention at least is to continue the journey there. Although before that, I am currently working fortunately have had more time to work on an album that's geared more towards solo guitar. Abandon All Hope guitar was just part of an ensemble. I mean, maybe it was one of the main characters, but it wasn't the only one. And that was what I wanted to do, is I wanted to incorporate it into an ensemble without it being entirely guitar-centric.
Yeah, because sorry, I'll interject here quickly, because on Abandon All Hope, the instruments are very equal, and they complement each other compared to the first album. So
Hail Souls, yeah. I mean, I've always wanted and enjoyed the way. Well, I've always wanted to have the other instruments that I play with not just be relegated to essentially backing tracks. That's why it's like you have Stu Hamm on your album, like there's no relegating Stu to anything, right? He's Stu. And John Mader's such a fantastic drummer. And now my drummer, Thomas Perry, who I play with for my live stuff, and he played on Abandon All Hope, and Anna Pfeiffer is the bass player that I play with for my trio as well, and she's amazing. I've always enjoyed the way, like Steve Moore's band and the Dixie Dregs, like even though, Steve was the guy who's, kind of the band leader or whatever, the solo artist, it's never just about the guitar. Like always the other instruments have really important and really cool parts, and so even if the guitar is like, a central aspect of it, there's dialoguing, there's, it's never just like, hey guys, just hold down a beat and some changes while I shred. And same thing with like Jeff Beck, another one of my heroes. There's always a wonderful interaction with the instruments. But with Abandon All Hope, I think I was more clear as to how to do that better. And hopefully now even more clear. Well,
I'm looking forward to hearing some new music from you when it comes out. I'll be definitely keep following you and.
Thank you. Yes, this next album will at least be more practical for live playing. That's the only thing that's that I'm sad that Abandon All Hope is so. It's not that it's impossible to play live, but the budget. Well, the budget and the time, because some people say, well, why don't you just play with backing tracks? And I think, well, then you haven't heard the album. If you think that first violin could be relegated to a backing track, like no way. All of the parts are so important. It would be like playing a string quartet is only the viola, with backing tracks of everybody else. So just the budget and the rehearsal required to do that live is so daunting. I'm certainly open to it, but not until I have a lot more money. At least these pieces for solo guitar, I was interested in doing something, having gone way to the other extreme of having guitar be just an instrument in an ensemble, I was kind of curious to be like, okay, what can I do now as a more able composer than I was, you know, a few years ago? What could I do with just a guitar? And then the side benefit being this is stuff I could actually tour with and I could actually play. And just to have a nice contrast to my last album before I go back into Purgatorio.
It's amazing. I mean, I was reading as well. You played in an AC/DC tribute band before.
I did. That was my first professional band.
I mean, you know, when you come from there and to where you are now, it's amazing the journey. You know, and how did that happen? The AC/DC tribute band.
Okay, so I had graduated with a degree in music and some classical guitar training, and I was on the fence as to whether I go back to graduate school and study composition with an emphasis, you know, while continuing to study classical guitar, or whether I wanted to go out in the real world and actually play gigs. And because I'm from a family of like, I'm the least educated person in my immediate family. Like everybody else has got PhDs and stuff, and that, you know. So I thought I can always go back to school. You know, school is what my family does. And I thought, let me get my hands dirty. I don't want to be somebody who's just kind of this precious, untouched by the real world. Like I want to do sound checks, and I want to like have to load gear. I mean, I don't want to have to load gear. I'm over that, but I do. But I wanted some real world experience. Like my dad went back to school and got his, you know, and I should say he's an MFA, not a PhD, MFA, much later in life. And my mom as well. She's a psychologist, and she got her doctorate when she was like in her 50s or something like that. So I just always kind of thought, oh, I can do that later. And I sort of came up with a criteria of what I wanted in a band, and I was like, okay, I want to have to play lead guitar, I want to play rock guitar, and I want to play in a band that allows, or even better, requires me to have some sort of stage presence, because playing classical guitar, it's very easy to become like a total, like to have no stage presence at all. And I thought I need something that's going to push me in that direction. And then a common friend was like, hey, I recommended you for this gig. And I was like, okay, check, you know, Agnes Young, yep, that's rock, that's lead, and that's some stage presence. So I did that, and that's where I was there.
Did you lift up your leg there as you went across the stage?
Did I what?
Lift up your leg while you went across the stage?
I duck walked, I did it, come on, it's, you know, I do my homework, I rolled on my back, I rolled on shoulders through the audience. I mean, I had a sore neck every night. Oh my God, I don't know how Angus does that every night. It's, you know, and yeah, and I was really young too doing that. I mean, because I graduated early, so I was, you know, and I'm thinking like, how does a dude my dad's age do this every night? Like, oh my God. So that's how I met Clementine, the drummer for Zepparella, and like my musical life partner.
Was she part of the band then?
She was the drummer.
Okay.
She was the drummer, and that's how I met her. And we were in that band. I think it feels like it was so much longer, but I think it was just over a year and a half. But so much happened in that time. And then we started Zepparella. I mean, it's possible it was 2 years, but I don't think it was more than 2 years. I think Zepparella started about a year and a half into AC/DC.
Okay, and what's the change? I mean, it's quite a shift.
It was really just, I mean, I was still wanting to just get some experience on stage, and that was sort of what my community was at that point. What it was is really that Clementine and I had bonded over really wanting to be career musicians. The other girls in AC/DC, who were fantastic, by the way, like the lead singer was like channeled Bon Scott the way I've never seen anybody but Bon Scott do it. And she was this like gorgeous woman, but she was so badass. But they had other things, you know. It's like for them, AC/DC was like, that was their band, that was what they wanted to do. and Clementine played in an original band, and so basically we just wanted to play more and do more than what the rest of the group of AC/DC wanted to do with the band. And so Clem had said, like, oh, I wish we could, do a Led Zeppelin thing, which would, because I've always wanted to study this music anyway, what better way to study hard than to be accountable on stage? And it means that we can say, we could pick up gigs that maybe AC/DC doesn't want to play. So I was like, can I audition? And I was entirely unqualified. I mean, I was so new as a guitar player. I mean, I had 3 years of classical guitar playing and then a little bit beyond that. So major credit to Clem for taking a risk on somebody who was utterly unqualified for the
Well, you guys are doing an awesome job.
Yeah, she knew I'd work for it, so yeah.
Well, listen, it's getting on. I suppose we could chat forever. This was one last question to the viewers out there. Any last words that you would, or any advice that you would give to any sort of budding musician?
The last words part sounded so dark. I was like, oh my God, am I about...
Sorry.
Famous last words. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, I would say do music because you love music, and always make choices that honor why you're doing music. Yes. Don't be afraid to stay a student and to learn and grow. But music is not a good financial choice, and that's fine. And just remember that you're having that trade-off. Mm-hmm. That in order to love what you do every day, you're not going to buy a lot of stuff. And that's, if you're cool with that, then you're not going to resent music. So always stay clear as to why you're doing it, and make sure that you protect that love of it in whatever way you need to, so that every day you're excited to play.
That's awesomely said.
Thanks
so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Such a delight to chat with you.
Yeah, and I hope in the future we can chat again, possibly like when you have new material or anything. I would love to chat again.
Definitely. Let's do it. I'd love to.
I would love to even possibly like review your album or something like that, because I do reviews for albums for another magazine in Europe as well. So yeah, I enjoy stuff like that.
Great. Okay, I'll keep you posted when my new album's out. We'll see.
Okay.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
Okay.
You as well. And good luck with your music.
Thanks a lot.